Well, welcome. This is God Talk, and I'm happy you're here. I'm Pastor Dan, and this is God Talk. We talk about God, and I'm hoping you're finding us regularly, whether it's morning, noon, or night. If you'll just take 28 minutes or whatever we have left here and wrestle with an issue that is really on the tip of all of our tongues. Where is God when we want him to be there? And all of that. Now, we're not going to answer every question today, but let's just wrestle with this issue about, does God rescue us when we're in trouble? There's an old drama. I don't really know how to do it here today because I would need two people, and I've done it in church. I even had a friend of mine did it with a rope. So a guy is climbing a mountain. And he's got all ready to go. It's okay, baby, let's go. And he begins to climb up. And then all of a sudden, he slips. And he's hanging on the bottom of his climbing rope, but he's over space. And if he doesn't have someone rescue him, he's going to die. So he says, hey, somebody help me. And a big voice says, yes, Jerry. Who said that? Why, it is I, Jerry. Who's I? Where is I? I'm all around you, Jerry. You mean, are you trying to tell me, are you who I think you are? Yes, Jerry. Well, boy, am I glad you're here, God. You see, I was just climbing this stupid mountain. I made that mountain, Jerry. Oh, I love mountains, God. Thank you. You're welcome. But then luckily I fell. I grabbed this rope. But is someone going to get me out of here, God? If anyone can get me out, you can, God. Can you get me out? That's right, Jerry. Then get me out of it. All right, Jerry. Do you trust me? I trust you with all my heart, God. But do you trust me with your life? Of course I do, God. I've got no choice. Who else am I going to trust up here? Do you have faith in me, Jerry? This is really a bad time for a quiz, God. Yes, I have faith in you. You get me out of this, I'll do anything. I'll go be a missionary. I'll go to Africa. I'll go to the Bahamas. Anywhere, God. I'll even tithe 10%. Okay, Jerry. Are you ready? Oh, I'm ready, God. Then let go of the rope, Jerry. Let go of the rope, God? I know people who say you have no sense of humor, but you have a sense of humor, God. That's a good one. Let go of the rope, Jerry. I'm not going to let go of the rope. I can't do that. But you said you trusted me, Jerry. I do, but it only goes so far. Oh, Jerry. Hey, Lord. Yes, Jerry. Is there anybody else I can talk to up there? Is God a rescuer? Is he able to rescue? Does he want to rescue? Does he always want to rescue in every situation? These are always the hard questions. We were having Vacation Bible School, and the theme was, when you're in trouble, Jesus rescues. It was the week when the kids in Thailand were lost in that cave. I grew up in Thailand. Thailand's my second home. So this is not really where I grew up exactly, but not far. A bunch of kids were at soccer practice. They go to a cave, and the young soccer coach decides to take his kids, 12, 13, 14 years old, into the cave. Somehow they get lost, it rains, there's a flash flood. They go deeper into the cave to get away from the water, and now no one can get to them. Finally, after a week, British diver is way back in there, a kilometer back into the cave. He's at the end of his rope. You know, they're using safety ropes. He's at the end of his rope. He comes up and has his light, and there are 13 sets of eyes looking at him. 12 kids, and the young coach. They've been in pitch black darkness for a week. No light, no food, nothing for a week. And all of a sudden, there's a scuba diver with a mask. And now maybe there's hope. Now they know where they are. Now comes the question, how are you going to get them out? Are you going to drill a hole down there? And they're trying to drill holes. Can you take inexperienced kids who've never dove anywhere, maybe even don't know how to swim, and bring them all out? 100 people, expert scuba divers and rescue divers from all over the world. I'm a scuba diver, but I don't think I would know how to do that. But somehow these experts knew how to have a system of ropes, took all the scuba gear in there with their masks and what they call a BC, the buoyancy compensator, and took everything in there, explained to them exactly what they were going to do. They'd given them food and water. And then they had some practice runs, and then they say, okay, now we got to go get these kids out. And we got the news. 1 was out. 2 was out. And finally, 13 out of 13. I was giving a Bible study to a guy that I work with, really have never gotten him over the hump yet to faith. But I certainly tried many late dinners, late at night. And I tried to convince him, and I said to him, do you think God was involved? 13 out of 13. One of the rescue divers was a Christian, said this is a 1 in a million shot that we could get all 13 of those kids out. That far, no experience, had to go under the water, breathe from a tank when they've never done it before, and hold on to ropes and get them all the way out. The guy was at the end of his rope. 15 more feet, he would have turned around and never seen them. They were within the last 15 of ropes after a kilometer under the cave. Is that God? Or not? Just good fortune and very talented scuba divers. Do we dare say, like they said to the kids in the Vacation Bible School, whenever you're in trouble, God will rescue? Ponder that. What do the stories in the Bible tell you? In the Red Sea, Moses does all his little magic tricks with the rod going down to be a snake, and okay, God does seem to have power. Maybe if God can do that, he can get us out of slavery. And so here they take. I don't know how many there were. There's a rumor it was a couple million people. There are those who debate that. Whatever it is, there's a crowd of people. They come to the Red Sea, flooded Red Sea, too wide, no bridge, no boats, cliffs and mountains on both sides. Egyptian army coming from behind them. Now you're stuck. Does God always rescue? People begin to murmur against Moses. God says, Moses, hit the water. I'll make it open. And a sea opens up in front of them. And they go across. God lets the waters go back. The Egyptian army dies. Miriam gets out her tambourine and the ladies dance and they sing, the Lord has hurled the horse and rider into the sea. God is a rescuing God. When you're in trouble, God will rescue. There's the old joke about the hippie who was sitting by the curb waiting for the bus to come in the bus terminal. Every few pages he's reading the Bible, he would say, hallelujah, praise the Lord. A man dressed in a nice suit went over there and said, what are you reading? Oh, I'm reading the Bible. All these miracles in the Bible when they crossed over the Red Sea and God opened up the water. The man said, that wasn't a miracle. They've gone over there. They've proven that it was only 6 inches of water right there. There's no miracle. The guy thought he had ended that. No more faith. Went back to his seat. The young hippies kept reading. All of a sudden, hallelujah. The businessman comes running over and he says, now what? He said, now this is a miracle for sure. God drowned the whole Egyptian army in your 6 inches of water. It's God rescue. Probably one of my favorite verses in the Bible is 1 Samuel chapter 30, verse 6, where it says, David strengthened himself in the Lord. You know the story. I'm betting David is supposed to be the king. God is tired of Saul. He's frustrated that Saul has lost his relationship with God. And so God tells Samuel to go find a new king. And he goes down through the 7 brothers and he puts an anointing on David and says, you're supposed to be the next king. David didn't ask to be the king, but now he's anointed to be the king. And now there's this battle between the old anointed king and the new anointed king. And Saul does not want to give it up, and he's hunting David all over the mountains. And I've been reading the Psalms in my devotions, and you can read the different psalms that David writes when Saul is hunting him, asking God to deliver him and rescue him. And in the story in 1 Samuel verse 30, David ends up in Ziklag. They've been looking forward to having a few days at home with their families. And when they come around the corner or over the top of the mountain and there's their village, it's burned to the ground. Philistines have burned it to the ground. They've taken all the wives and the children and everybody. The animals are gone. It's scorched earth. And David's own men picked up stones to stone David. It's a bad day. You're supposed to be the king. You should be in the palace. You used to be the ruler of Israel and everybody cheering and crying out your name. And instead, you're running in the mountains hiding from this terrible king. And you've lost everything. Your wife, your children, your house, your savings, whatever you have, it's gone. And your own people have turned on you, and you're alone. He could not go to the bank and get a loan. He couldn't go to the government and have someone fight. There was no judge to go to rectify the wrong. David was alone. All he had was God. And it says, David strengthened himself in the Lord. And I've given that verse to many people. It's been a blessing to me. There are times when you have to latch on to God, and God is the only one. And you have to know how to be able to find that God and be strengthened by God all by himself. And somehow through the miles of space, without being able to hear a voice, without being able to see the hand of God physically, you have to trust that some way or another, God is a rescuing God. David strengthened himself in the Lord. And they went after the Philistines, and they got all their women and their children back, and God is a rescuing God. I was in Thailand growing up as a young boy. We were missionaries, and my grandfather came over to visit us and decided to take us down to the beach, a couple hours south of Bangkok. And there were all these hawkers there offering you a boat ride. You can go for a sailboat ride. So somehow I think my grandfather decided he would pay for a sailboat ride. We're just little kids, but I remember it. We're in this little sailboat, and we're out in the ocean when all of a sudden a storm came up. And we began to pray, God, get us out of this. Just get us out of this, God. Get us somehow back to the shore. And we did. There was another time we were all the missionaries. We used to stay at a certain Baptist camp there. It's now surrounded by buildings, a place called Pattaya. Taken my group there several times. But we decided to go out to a little island. This is now a huge resort, but back then it was a little primitive place. You could take a boat out there, and you'd be the only ones on the island. It was a wonderful, pristine, white sand beach. We loved it. Went there many times. So 30 or 40 of us, all the missionaries from Bangkok, had a weekend away. We all got on that boat, went over there. We had a good time. Time to go back. Storm came up. Now we're in this little fishing boat, and we're just sitting on the deck. You know, there's no protection. There's no cabin. There's nothing. And we're rocking, and it's raining, and it's storming, and we're psyched out. When one of the doctors, one of the more wealthy doctors, though they're missionaries and didn't have a lot of money, cried out to God, if you'll get us out of this, I'll give you $1,000. This is 50 years ago, more than 50 years ago. $1,000 is a lot of money now. It's a lot of money back then. And I don't know if that made any difference to God. Probably not. But we got out of that. Do you need to pay God? Do you need to bargain with God in order to get God to rescue you and to come through? Is God hard to persuade? Is God sort of sitting in heaven reluctant to use his power? If we all agree that God has power, there are some who have said maybe the problem is that God doesn't have the power. Rabbi Kushner, who wrote the book, Why Bad Things Happen to Good People, rather than give up God's goodness, he gave up God's power, and he said, God doesn't have the power to rescue you. All he has the power to do is to come alongside you and to be with you and to comfort you and go through the valley of the shadow of death with you. But he doesn't have the power to actually rescue you. But most of us reject that. And we would say God does have the power. But is God reluctant? Do you have to make promises and deals with God? I've had people do that. Pastor Dan, you pray and I'll pray, and if God helps me pass my medical boards, I'll give him money. And I was thankful for the money that helped my mission projects. But was God persuaded by the donation of money? I don't really want to give it, but if you'll give me something, then I'll give it to you, God. If you come through. I had a man stand up and he said, he told God that if he would help me with this problem, I would give up drinking coffee. And he said it worked. So a couple weeks later, I needed something else. So I said, what else can I give God? So I forget what he gave him second. Is God a deal-making God? Or is that a pagan view of God? Do you have to somehow bargain with God and give him offerings and sacrifices? We're going to India next month. We will be in Hyderabad. Hyderabad has a huge lake. I have been there when they were having what they call the Ganesh festival, the big elephant god with the big elephant trunk riding on a mouse. And somehow they think that the way that they should negotiate with their God is to throw images of Ganesh into this lake. I don't know how that lake handles. Some of them were 50, 60 feet high. They have cranes to help swing those images out into the lake. Otherwise, you go buy a small one and you throw it. The bigger one you throw, the more God will rescue you. I don't know if they go and fish them back out or how that lake doesn't just fill up. But I've been there when they were doing it. Is God a bargaining kind of God, a reluctant God in order to rescue? But we would say to the kids, God is a rescuing God. If you're in trouble, God will rescue you. You do not have to make payments. You do not have to give sacrifices. You don't have to make deals with God. If you cry out, he will answer. We were in Thailand when I was young, and we used to go to a place called Wantagrai. Everyone loved Wantagrai. I don't know if they still go there or not. It was a river that had some little light rapid. This is not, Category 5 whitewater rapid. This is not kayaking. This was just inner tubing. But it was a lot of fun. You would get your inner tube and you would wheel it up there and you would jump in the water and go meandering down. There were places that were a little faster. When you got down to the end, then you had to kind of paddle to get out of the current and over to the shore. I think I'm probably 10, 11 years old. We loved it, went many times. But one of the first times when we did it, I really didn't quite grasp how hard you had to paddle to get out of that current. And I went sailing by where you're supposed to get out. And no one seemed to notice that I didn't make it. So I'm heading to the ocean. I'm heading to China. I don't know what was going to happen to me, but I knew that no one seemed to know that I had missed the cutoff point. And so I finally paddled over, and there were some vines hanging down from this bank. I grabbed those vines. Well, as soon as I grabbed those vines, I lifted up from the inner tube. The inner tube went sailing away. So I didn't have that anymore. So I am here, a little 10, 11-year-old kid, hanging on to these vines by dear life. And there's 7 or 8 feet of bank to get up to where there was solid ground. And that was not possible for an 11-year-old kid. And I didn't know what else to do but to begin to scream. I don't think I prayed, but I screamed, somebody help me. And one of the missionaries, a wonderful pastor named Chet Damron, just passed away. He somehow heard this little boy and came. And you have no idea. When you know you could die and drown right here, when all of a sudden there's someone with a hand and reaches down and pulls you up. I needed a Savior. I needed someone to rescue me. No more did we finish my little escapade. Thank you very much. My little brother, David, did the same thing. He lives right here in San Bernardino teaching math. We're two little kids, and now he makes a mistake. He went the other direction. Instead of going to the shore, he went over to some vines and reeds in the middle of this river. And he latched onto those vines for dear life, and his inner tube went shooting away. Now, no one could just reach down and pull him out. It's 50 feet across rapid river. So everyone began to panic. What can we do for this little American white boy, glasses, trying to hang on to those vines? Finally, one guy got a few inner tubes together. He went over there, but my brother wouldn't let go. So that didn't work. They tried to throw him a rope. He wouldn't let go. Finally, I'll never forget it. One of the Thai guys, who was not that big, he went up a little ways ahead. He went running down the bank as fast as he could go, and he just went into that river. It wasn't that deep, and he just ran through that river. The river's pushing him down, and he's running across it, and he made it. And he got a hold of that, my brother, and they got a hold of the rope, and he put an arm around him, and they pulled him back to the shore. Someone rescues. Does Jesus always rescue you if you need it? Maybe not. Does he always do it in the way that you want him to? Probably not. Does he always do it when you want him to? Probably not. If you lose your wallet and you pray, will you always find your wallet? Or sometimes you'll have to go and get another wallet and redo your driver's license and your credit cards. And we've all had a hard time with the simple little children's stories that they say to this. If you lose something, you'll find it. And kids think that's true, and then comes the wake-up call when it doesn't work the way you thought. But even if it doesn't happen always the way we want, can we say clearly, God is a rescuer. He has rescued thousands of times. He has the power to rescue. And there are many, many, many times in our lives when God is a rescuing God. You think about Daniel 6. They want to test Daniel out and see if he will hold on to his God or will he switch loyalties and go with the king. He can hear the lions roaring, and Daniel decides that he will throw open the window and he will pray to God. He will not change. And he prays to God 3 times a day, morning, noon, and night, the way he always has. They take him, they throw him into the lions. You think about that, being in with the lions. I sometimes translate that into snakes because I grew up in the land of snakes. What would it be like to be in a room with crawling snakes in the dark? You don't know where they are, and you're down there with them. I watched a movie for a few minutes one time of Raiders of the Lost Ark, I think it was. And he's down in the pyramids with all these snakes. I said, how did he film that? Terrifying. So Daniel's in there with all these lions. And there's no little room you can go in and shut the door. There's no little armor you can put on. You're there, and all you have is God. There's no light. You can't run around all night. You're just going to have to trust God. And Daniel trusts God. And then in the morning, all of a sudden, there's a shaft of light. And someone comes in above you and throws you a rope and pulls you out. Those lions were hungry. They ate the next group of guys before they even hit the ground. God is a rescuing God. The king, a pagan king, called down, is your God able to save you from the lions? Yes, he was. Young man became a Christian down in Brazil. He worked in a zoo. He was telling some other of his friends in the zoo about how his faith in God helped him through life. And they said, if you're such a great Christian, jump in the lion cage. Let's see if God will do it for you like he did in the Bible. You think you're so spiritual? The guy is a brand new Christian. He doesn't know any better. He jumps into the lion's cage. The lion rises up from his little den over there and comes running over, sniffs them all over, and goes back and lies down. God did it again, and all 7 of his friends got baptized. True story, Brazil. Jesus is in a boat, and he's sleeping there. And all of a sudden, a storm comes up, and they're bailing, and they're trying to do whatever they can. And finally, there's no other solution. And they say, Jesus, are you going to let us die here? And Jesus rises up, and he says, why are you of such little faith? And he says, peace, be still, calms the storm. Did they really think that they were going to die with Jesus in the boat? The newspaper heading would be the next day, 12 disciples die with their master Jesus. No, I don't think so. Jesus is a rescuer, and he calms the storms. Whatever storm you have, whatever storm I have, he can calm the storms. If you have physical storms, he can calm the waters. If you have emotional storms, he can calm those. If you got storms in your family, as much as it has to do with you, he can make peace. That's what he's able to do. If you're powerless, he can rescue. If you've made some sins, he can save you from that. If you've got financial challenges, he has ways to resolve that. Our God is a rescuing God. We put our anchor point there. If you know my family at all, I'm a Vendan. If you know our Adventist family, there's been a family of Vendans now, several generations. My uncles here in Loma Linda and other places were well-known pastors. My mother is a Vendan. And the Vendan family comes from Norwegian farmers up in the northern part of Wisconsin. I've been to the farm. I've been to where the story happened. They were surrounded by a prairie fire. All the neighbors came because they had a spring on the Vendan farm. And they're all around that spring, fires all around them. They would wet the blankets and they would get under the blankets, family, all the kids. And then the spring ran out. My great-grandfather, Nels Vendan, got under the blanket and he said, if God doesn't do a miracle, we're going to die right here. And she said, I can't believe that. Under that blanket, they prayed to God, God, if you'll just save us from this place, we will do whatever you want. They went back to the spring, and the spring was full of water. They kept the blankets wet. They saved everybody. They read a book. They began to keep the Sabbath, and they became Adventists. And 120 years of Adventists come from that. God is a rescuing God. I know I can't say that it's all the time. We suffer, and someday we'll go to heaven. And someday he will rescue us from this world and take us to another place. But I will die for this. Our God is able to rescue us. He is a rescuing God. When we're in trouble, we can strengthen ourselves in the Lord. This is God Talk. God bless you.